Welcome to Early Adopter, the podcast where we help make AI your unfair advantage. I'm Jess, marketing exec by day, AI experimenter by day, night, and basically every other waking moment in between at this point.
And I'm Kyle, your resident tech guru. I've spent the last decade building data systems, products, and AI tools that solve real-world problems. Each week, we'll break down AI concepts, tools, or trends that actually matter for your business.
So whether you're a small business owner, an entrepreneur, or you're just tech curious, let's dive in. Just think of us as your guides through the wild, wonderful, and sometimes completely overwhelming world of AI.
This is Early Adopter.
Welcome back to Early Adopter, the podcast where we help make AI your unfair advantage. I'm Jess.
And I'm Kyle. So Jess, how's your week been?
It's been a little quiet and a little boring. Not a whole lot to report. I went for a lovely walk in Richmond this morning. So if anyone ever watches Ted Lasso, Richmond is a real neighborhood in southwest London, and it is absolutely beautiful, very picturesque and cutesy. So I went and met a friend, and we walked along the river, and that was probably the most interesting thing I've done this week.
I mean, that sounds lovely. And
It was.
I'm absolutely obsessed with Ted Lasso. So yeah, I just got a little ping in the feels. Maybe I should do a little rewatch soon.
Oh, you should. The new season's coming out. The most wholesome show. Do you know, it actually took me quite a long time to get into that show. I tried it about 3 or 4 times before I really got into it. And I don't know what it was about it that just I found it a little too sickly sweet. Little too, as we say over here, it's a little twee.
I think that's that Britishness that you've occupied.
Yeah,
you just can't take the wholesome just yet. It takes a little while to break the ice off of the heart.
I mean, pretty much. Eventually I got into it and I really loved it. But it took me, I had to try about 3 or 4 times to watch it before I actually got into it. So
the important thing is you stuck with it.
I did.
Because one of the best shows of all time.
Well, because everyone kept saying how much they loved it. And also I love Brett Goldstein. He's hilarious.
Spectacular.
So, I know.
He gets a lot more Roy as the show goes on. I don't know if you've noticed that.
He definitely does. Also, my friend's dog is called Roy, not after the footballer Roy Keane, who is the
I think the inspiration for that character.
That was exactly it. So yeah, exactly. But also this dog is like the tiniest, fluffiest Chihuahua Pomeranian thing you've ever seen. So it's hilarious that this little fluffy dog is called Roy. Anyway, how was your week?
Yeah, my week was great. I actually got to see Sean from some of our earlier episodes. We met IRL in real life.
Wow.
We went to a Databricks conference to see the latest on data, which is, probably not where most people would want to spend their time. But, as a data geek myself, it was fairly interesting. We checked out some panels. We were in some workshops. I would say the enterprise data community is still very focused on data people and not necessarily how does this work for, the entrepreneur operator, how do we democratize and make this easier? It was very, very data heavy. So
yeah, when I've been to those sorts of conferences, I have a relatively good understanding of these things. Like I don't get in the weeds with it, but I understand it. And I remember in one panel and I sat there for about 5 minutes and I was like, nope. Well, before we get started, Kyle, I realized something the other day. This is our 20th episode. Woo! Happy 20th to us. We're almost legal to drink.
20 weeks old is not legal to drink. I guess if we're taking it in years, fair enough.
I'm sure it is in France. It's like dog years.
There we go. Well, that's exciting. We're all grown up.
That is exciting. We're all almost there. Our frontal lobes haven't fully developed yet.
I'm still waiting on that myself.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, I just wanted to flag that because we didn't actually mention that when we passed our 10th episode. So I wanted to make sure that we flagged it for our 20th. So congratulations, us. We stuck with it. So moving on to our topic for this week, we have been talking about this for a while, and it's finally time for us to tackle it. And this is the concept of answer engine optimization, AEO, Ooh, it's also known as AIO, uh, GSO,
GEO. Yeah.
GEO, conversational search, contextual search. It's got a lot of different names. For the sake of this podcast, we're calling it AEO. It's going to be quite an important topic, and there's been a lot more kind of buzz around it in the last couple of weeks. So that's why we wanted to talk about it.
I think when you first mentioned AEO to me back in, I don't know, like 9 months ago, 6 months ago. Well, I think we were calling it GEO then. AEO, I
Yeah,
think,
we
is
were.
like maybe a month or so ago. I'm not sure.
It changes so quickly.
It changes a lot, which is why I kind of thought it was just another marketing buzzword, right? But the more we've looked into it, especially this week, and dove into the technical side, this is really fundamentally changing how search works.
Yeah, absolutely. And, a lot of people still haven't quite caught on to this yet. There are some reports that are showing that 60% of searches now end without a click. That's from a recent report that Hubspot did. And if you know Hubspot, it's a big CRM platform, sales platform. And this is exactly in their wheelhouse. Essentially, it means that AI engines are becoming the new Google. This is one of the reasons why Google is kind of in panic mode at the minute. But honestly, a lot of people still haven't heard of this concept.
Yeah, I think that is one of the problems is we haven't
It
come up
is.
with a
It's
proper nomenclature
absolutely,
yet.
yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, if search, Google is search, then ChatGPT is AEO or answer
Yep.
engine or whatever have you. And
Yep.
let's be honest, like we all joke now about, oh, let me go ask chat. But actually, that's where people are going to find answers.
That's exactly it. And I think we'll talk a little bit more about the consumer behavior changes because that is a really, really big part of this. So this is actually going to be a 2-part series. This week, we're going to kind of give a little bit of an overview about what it is and why it matters. And then next week, we're going to deep dive into the practical tips and takeaways because, again, it's a big topic and there's a lot to cover. So we want to make sure that we're giving everything the proper attention.
Yeah, because if you think traditional SEO was a game changer for businesses, I mean, we've been on that now for 20, 25 years of lessons and learning, and businesses are still trying to figure out. So now we have AEO. It's an evolutionary step on SEO. How long is it going to take us to figure that out? So we definitely need to be part of kind of that early movement or early adopters, if you will.
See what you did there.
I know, I try. And, look, it can be an absolutely massive advantage if you figure this out early.
Especially because a lot of people are still kind of wrapping their heads around this. So that was actually a nice segue with your little talk about SEO, because I think let's do a little bit of an SEO refresher because AEO builds on those foundations. So as a reminder, traditional SEO, which is search engine optimization, is all about making your website more visible in search engine results. So for the past 20 years, it's been about keyword research. You create content around those keywords, you build backlinks from other sites and technical optimizations. And all of that helps Google understand and rank your pages. So the goal is pretty straightforward. It's to rank as high as possible for relevant search terms so that people click through to your website. It's pretty straightforward. But answer engine optimization, AEO, is kind of at its very core, it's quite different, although it builds on those SEO foundations. So instead of optimizing to show up in a list of search results, you're optimizing your content to show up in AI generated responses. So, think of the AI overview that a lot of people have seen and actually kind of hate in Google. I had someone ask me how to switch it off the other day. Or, ChatGPT or Perplexity, like all of those sorts of things. So instead of trying to rank number 1 in traditional search results, you're now trying to become the source that AI engines quote when someone asks a question. So it is quite a different approach.
So where traditional SEO was, as you mentioned, keywords, backlinking, between your different pages, and you could kind of see yourself moving up in those rankings. All of the goal of that was, as you get higher in the rankings, you get more clicks because people didn't scroll down super far, right? They would click the top 2 or 3. AEO now flips that. It's about getting cited, not about ranking. So SEO focused on keywords. AEO focuses on answering questions directly. And where SEO required you to win that ranking game, AEO is about becoming the source that these AI engines like ChatGPT or Claude or even Google's AI overview choose to cite when people ask questions. So again, instead of hoping to win that single number one blue link at the top of the Google keyword, you want your content mentioned positively across many, many sources that the AI pulls from.
Exactly. And I talked a couple weeks ago when we spoke to Eric about my favorite Google pizza glue story. And this is exactly it, because the question that the person asked, which was, how do I get cheese to stick to pizza? There is very little information about that. So Google pulled from the only source that it could find, which was Reddit. And that's why you ended up with that ridiculous response. So that is essentially the concept. You're just trying to become that one-sided source. And it means that people are getting their answers right in the AI overview. So we're really looking at a massive, massive shift in how people are searching and how people are communicating and finding out information.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, that could be potentially kind of terrifying if you're if you're still trying to drive website traffic, because we talk about this 60% of searches don't result in a click to your website from that blue link. So if you're not getting traffic, what do you do?
Yeah, absolutely. And there is a podcast episode that I highly, highly recommend anyone listen to if they want a little bit more information about this. We'll definitely put this in the show notes. But there is a podcast called Lenny's Pod, and he does an incredibly useful interview with a guy called Ethan Smith, who is the CEO of a company called Graphite. And he is really like the authority in this space. But they work with Webflow, which is a website builder. And they've been finding that the traffic from AI engines was converting at 6 times the rate of normal Google traffic. So it's much, much, much more effective. And we'll talk a little bit about why that's effective later.
Yeah, that 6 times is incredible. I mean, I was kind of blown away by that stat. Even 2x or 3x would be something to take notice of, but 6x is obviously like a fundamental, shift.
Yeah. But it actually really makes sense if you think about someone's user journey, because if someone's asking ChatGPT what's the best CRM for a marketing agency that integrates with HubSpot and has advanced reporting, and it recommends your specific product, that person is much further down the funnel. So they're much more likely to convert because they're looking for something that is really, really, really specific. So if you are providing those services, then it makes sense that someone's going to be much more likely to convert to purchase, because they're already, rather than just Googling, best CRM platforms, they're already looking for something specific, and you tick all of those boxes. So they've essentially had a consultation with an AI that understands their really specific needs and kind of serves it up on a platter.
Yeah. For better or worse, right? We trust these AI tools almost implicitly.
We do.
And so,
we do.
You're, as soon as you get, hey, this is the best CRM, you're qualified. You're like in the funnel, you're ready to go, which, we talk about trust issues all the time, and we'll get more to that. But
yeah. So when it comes to the actual technical perspective, how are these AI engines actually deciding what to quote? Like how does the technical side work?
So when you ask ChatGPT a question or any other LLM, it often uses a retrieval layer to pull relevant information. When you see it on the little thing, say, searching the web, this is a retrieval layer that they've added. It's a big improvement over the last couple of years so that it starts to bring in relevant information. It doesn't have that cutoff date like we've talked about. So this could be a web search via Google or its own crawlers or Bing search, a lot of different ways to do it. It could come from knowledge sources or indexes like Wikipedia, which is a really strong, relevant, authoritative source. Or it could connect, to a browser like its own ChatGPT browsing mode. So once it's then retrieved the relevant information, it synthesizes an answer from those retrieved sources. But it's not just the top one, but a blend of the information retrieved. So it'll often quote across several trusted sources.
So it essentially means that ChatGPT is going away and doing its own Google search, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But so does ranking still matter then if it's essentially going away and doing its own?
Yeah, I think this is where it gets really interesting. And perhaps to the relief of everyone who's spent, the last 20 years learning SEO, yes, ranking still matters, but only to a certain extent. So AEO is going to stand on the shoulders of SEO, but it really starts to add some unique layers to it, or kind of like its own really important step. And so what I mean by that is, if Bing or Google rankings are used by the LLM to fetch sources, higher ranked content is more likely to be in that candidate pool of information to draw from. But many retrieval systems rely heavily on Wikipedia and major publishers for ranking signals as well. And those give it like authority, recency, and relevance, all very important as we talk about for an LLM, because, again, that's a lot of the context.
I think this is also where a lot of these publisher partnerships start to come into play as well,
Totally.
because if they've got a partnership deal with the New York Times or something, then they're going to be pulling from an authority, which is
Yes.
a good thing, because they also will tend to pull significantly from something like Reddit, where, as we know, the information can sometimes be a little iffy sometimes.
Yeah, well, it's not published, it's not cited, whereas these, major publishers are.
Yep, exactly. Pizza glue. That's all I'm going to say. Pizza glue.
Exactly.
So to sum that up quickly, ranking does still matter in AEO, but in a slightly different way. So you can kind of think of it as like an entry ticket. So if your page doesn't rank at all, it might never get into the retrieval pool that ChatGPT or that Claude pulls from. But once you're in the pool, the AI doesn't care if you're at number 1 or number 10. It just cares about which content is clear, factual, and easy to quote. So the SEO kind of gets you into the room, but AEO is what makes the AI actually call your name. So SEO absolutely does still matter. You still have to put the effort in with your SEO, but AEO, as you said, kind of adds another layer to it.
Yeah, I love that room analogy because it's perfect, right? It gets you in the room, but you still need to be relevant to get called out. So to kind of contrast this in another way, SEO works by helping these search engines crawl and index your site, and then signaling that relevance and authority through things like the keywords and the site structure and all the things we talked about. The search engine's ranking algorithm weighs those signals to decide where your page shows up in those 1 to 10 results. Versus if we compare that to AEO, to be cited in AI answers, you need clear, fact-based content structured in a really understandable question and answer form. So it's like really clear what the data is, and then it needs to be supported by consistent mentions across trusted sources, not just your website, but lots of other places as well. And signals like, things that make your answers really easy to parse.
You mean parse in terms of a data perspective, right?
Sorry, yeah, let me say that. Basically, it makes the answers really easy to digest or to break apart.
Okay. But this is why SEO agencies have been so popular, because they improve search results by optimizing your site in general. And they create those keyword aligned content, and they build those backlinks to boost your relevance and trust with search engines. If you've ever worked with any sort of content agency or anything like that, like I've worked with an agency that did a lot of content a couple of years ago, and it's all about the keywords, sometimes to the detriment of the actual content. It's a real balancing act.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, the expectation probably was people aren't really reading the content. You just want the website traffic.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
But that's actually a great point, because in contrast, AEO agencies or anyone working on AEO, you need to, in order to improve results, you have to shape really clear, quotable answers. Like the content does need to be really good. And then you need to spread that content across trusted sources like blogs, forums, review sites, anywhere that people might look for, relevant information, and then structure that content in a way that AI engines can easily retrieve and cite it. So now all of a sudden the content is super important.
Yeah. So instead of focusing on one really strong piece of content, or really, dialing in on the website and making all of those keyword heavy pieces of content or whatever, you kind of need to be everywhere. Is that right?
Totally. And you need to be authentically everywhere, if that makes sense. So, what I think is great for our audience as we think about this, it's an opportunity to level the playing field again. So with traditional SEO, let's say you're a startup going against big established players spending tons of money on this, with massive domain authority. They've been in it for a long time. I mean, you're kind of screwed to go up that. You're never going to get, number 1, number 2 in those keyword rankings.
Yeah.
But with AEO, you can get mentioned in, a relevant Wikipedia article, a blog, maybe even a Reddit thread if you're so inclined. But that could be the difference between you starting to appear in AI answers immediately.
Yeah. So it might seem really easy, but again, that keyword is authentically, because something
Mhm.
like a platform like Reddit will know very easily and very quickly if you are spamming just
Mhm.
to get noticed. So the word authentically is quite important. The AI engines are getting really good at detecting spam. Reddit has very strong community guidelines and moderation, and they just don't take kindly to people who are very transparently selling. They will shut you down
Yeah.
really quickly. But if you're genuinely helpful, if you're actually helping people solve problems, and it just so happens that you talk about your podcast or, whatever it is that you're trying to, I'm just saying, it's something that, but if we as early adopter were on Reddit talking to people about AI for small businesses, that's how
Mm.
we would start getting
Yeah.
involved in Reddit, because we're having those conversations and helping people out
Right.
through authentic content, and we're solving problems and actually providing value.
One quick little aside, and this might be something to drill into later. Just as an anecdotal observation, I'm seeing a lot of AI generated content being put out there, especially when
Yes.
referencing companies. So I think people are starting to cotton onto this and are starting to try to like put a lot of like, oh hey, I'm solving this thing and here's my company if you're interested in, so that they show
Yeah.
up in these AI results. But to your point, you see a lot of people calling them out like, oh, this is shit generated content. Like we got to
Yeah.
get this out of here. But, so there really is that kind of trade-off between, trying to rank there, being authentic so that people aren't calling you out and kind of damaging your brand. And then also like what are the moderators doing for some of these subreddits to like kick those people out? Because I've seen a lot of like someone get posted and then get removed if they're getting too spammy. So Reddit's a really interesting kind of little microcosm to see how this is playing out.
Totally. And what's funny is I literally just put in our upcoming episodes database that we have that we should do an episode around AI slop, because that is starting to become increasingly a problem.
Yeah.
And for exactly this sort of reason, as people start to cotton on to AEO,
Mhm.
it's going to become a bigger and bigger issue. So when it comes to the content that works best, and again, we'll really get into this next week when we talk about practical tips and
Yeah.
strategies, but the content that works best for AEO is pretty straightforward and factual. So just really clear, simple statements that directly answer questions. You just want very clear, like, this Slack integrates with over 2,000 apps, or, Zoom
Mhm.
supports up to 1,000 participants. Just very clear, quotable facts that AI can easily pull and use when it's responding.
I think that brings up a really good question. What actually makes that content more likely to get picked up?
The basics still matter. This is why the basics of SEO still matter for AEO. So it's things like clear headings, natural language. Natural language is an important one. That is, the natural language essentially means just the way that we're talking right now, and how people would ask a natural question, as opposed to,
Drop that MBA buzzword speak,
yeah, exactly. So it's content that sounds like how people actually talk, rather than just very keyword heavy
Mm.
robot speak, which in my opinion is a problem with SEO, is
Thank
that it
thank
gets,
God, right?
yeah, it gets too keyword
Mhm.
heavy.
How many
And
times do you show up on a website and you read what they
yeah,
do and you're like, I have no
exactly.
idea what you do because it's so keyword heavy.
Yep.
Now,
It's a real problem.
yeah, now we get to basically say, hey, this is what we actually do and explain it like I'm five. That's gonna be
Yeah.
great for me.
I love
For
explaining
us,
like a
for
fan.
us simple folk over here, we need the simple answers. Just give me the details.
So there's also something called structured data markup, and you can go back and listen to our episode about data where we talk about structured data. But honestly, the biggest thing is just writing like a human for humans. So this
Mhm.
is where something like AI slop starts to become an issue.
Yeah, and this kind of ties into conversational search, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So if you think about how search behavior has changed, someone, 5 years ago, someone may have typed something like running shoes for men into
Mhm.
Google, right? Just 3 or 4 words. But now they're having full conversations with the AI. So they might say something like, I need waterproof running shoes for
Yeah.
men that are under $150 for marathon training. What are the best options? when I was searching for furniture a couple of months ago, I actually used this a lot because I was
Mm,
scouring the internet trying to find something really specific, and I would get into a back and forth conversation with chat where I would tell it, this is exactly
mhm.
what I'm looking for. It needs to look like this. I need to do, this. And it came back with some okay options. I didn't end up going with any of them, but at least it kind of widened my net a little
Yeah.
bit. So it's just much more of that back and forth. And it's a much longer, like, that's a
Mhm.
15, 20 word query instead of a 3-word keyword search. So it's like the difference between a telegram, like the Pony Express telegram, or an actual conversation that we would have now.
Yeah, and the user journey is very different. So,
Very
you
different.
know, you're all are always be iterating concept
Yep.
of if you didn't find what you liked after that first 15, 20 word query, you're
Yep.
asking it clarifying questions and giving it more context and more detail of what you're looking for. And all of a sudden, actually then if you take that entire context window, now it's like 1,000 words of you explaining what you're
Mm.
looking for. Very different than that 3 keyword search. So, I remember learning how to Google back in the day, using quotes for direct keyword match and stuff like that. All of that's kind of irrelevant now in this always be iterating mindset.
Absolutely. And then you also have to factor in voice search, which
Mm.
amplifies things even more. So, like, if I'm driving and I ask my phone about the weather or something, I don't say weather New York. I would say, what's the weather going to be like in New York this weekend? I'm thinking about having a barbecue or something like that. That's how people talk. They don't just say weather New York.
First off, love that. Hope you do have a barbecue this weekend.
I don't think
Like,
I will, sadly. I don't think the weather
where's
in
my
London
invite?
is, I mean, I know for a fact it's gonna rain tomorrow, so, you know.
Hey, I
Actually,
used
that's
to
true.
I
You
used to
did
barbecue in
barbecue
the
in the
rain.
rain. That is very
No
true.
excuses. Play like a champion.
I don't think you want me to barbecue, Kyle. I will charcoal any item that I put on that barbecue. I am not known for my cooking skills.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right, but let's get to the heart of this. So if AI is giving people answers directly, how are businesses supposed to get traffic? We've spent the last 25 years
Yeah.
traffic, traffic, traffic. Um, and then more importantly, like, how do I make money if I'm not getting any traffic?
Well, that is the billion-dollar question, and that's exactly why people need to know about AEO and be aware of it. If you think of it like when you would go to websites, right? That's a much more like individual, time-consuming process, and you're probably going to give up halfway because you're tired of clicking on various links. Now you're getting all the information within the chat. And
Hmm.
so it's going to become like a much more natural process. But what we're starting to see work in practice, and again, this is all incredibly, incredibly new. Even within the
Right.
last couple of months, it's really kicked off. So, this might change, but this is what we're seeing right now that's
Hmm.
working. Brand authority. So even if someone doesn't click through, if you're being cited as an expert on the topic, that builds massive brand equity. So people start to look you up, or people start to trust you as an authority because they've seen you as the expert answer multiple
Hmm.
times. So that's a really big thing. And then second, while AI searches are becoming zero click, and by zero click, I mean everything's happening within that chat, what I was just talking
Hmm.
about. Complex purchasing decisions are still driving website visits. So for a B2B buyer, you're going to want to verify information. You're going to want to dig deeper before you make
Hmm.
decisions. So while you might use the AI or the AI search as point you in the right direction or kind of make you aware of some tools that maybe you weren't aware of before, you're still going to go to that website just to get more information, to get case
Yeah.
studies, whatever the case may be.
Which is super interesting because,
Yeah.
effectively the people who do click through from an AI recommendation are far more qualified. We
Yep.
talk about like the funnel.
Yep.
You're basically been pre-vetted by the AI. You already know about the company now and it answered your direct question. So we should see really high conversion rates from traffic coming from AI engines.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is really key. AEO is becoming a channel. It's not
Hmm.
replacing all channels. So this is why you do still need traditional SEO, paid ads, organic, social, all of that. But if you
Hmm.
ignore it, it means that you're missing customers who are already making purchase decisions inside the AI engines because that is becoming increasingly common.
Okay, let's take a look at a concrete example of how this is playing out. So Target just
Yep.
announced they're completely rethinking their search strategy around what they call generative commerce. Oh, love that buzzword.
Yeah,
But,
exactly.
this isn't just tweaking their SEO. It's a total shift in how they think about product discovery.
This is a really interesting use case. And I'm going to caveat this with I did try and find a use case for a smaller business because Target obviously, has a lot of money behind it. They have people that and agencies that they can throw at this sort of thing, but
Mhm.
they just don't exist yet. I really struggled
Mm.
to find a use case that was a startup or a smaller business because it's just still such early days with a lot of this. But in the
Mm.
Target instance, so instead of optimizing individual product pages for keywords like winter coats, women, which is what they would previously have done, they're creating
Mhm.
comprehensive content experiences that kind of walks through the entire customer journey. So if someone asks an AI, what's the best winter coat for commuting to work in Chicago that's stylish enough for a client meeting and under $200, Target wants to be that answer. So again, it's getting much, much more specific. So they're
Mhm.
building what they're calling contextual product stories. So this is content that doesn't just list the features, but talks about how the product fits into real world scenarios, which is really interesting. So
Hmm.
their winter coat content will now include things like works in temperatures down to 15 degrees Fahrenheit or machine washable, or you can wear over business casual clothing, or what the sizes are. So it's giving a much fuller picture rather than just, again, that really keyword heavy product description that it would have had previously.
Yeah, this makes the product person in me super excited. And I think we've kind of mentioned this in the past, why, like in your Shopify store, if you have one of
Hmm.
those, your
Yep.
product descriptions need to be a lot more detailed and
Yep.
descriptive. This is where, AI is going to find that information and use the context. It's not just going to look at the name of your product. It's going to look at that description to figure out if it's relevant. But I think what makes me excited is all of that work, and especially in like a B2B relevance, all that work about customer journeys and customer pain points and how you
Yep.
solve a thing is now going to get used by the AI. So that's kind of exciting.
Totally. And they're really structuring that information so the AI engines can easily parse. Again, there's that word, and quote it. So according to Retail Dive, which is a industry trade magazine for the retail industry, early results are showing that customers who discover Target product through AI recommendations have a 47% higher purchase intent
Wow.
compared to traditional results. But I think one thing that's really smart about Target's approach is that they're not just optimizing for the initial discovery. They're thinking about that entire conversation, again, that entire customer journey that someone might have with an AI about getting ready for winter or planning, a work wardrobe or finding gifts. They really want to be part of that whole dialogue, not
Mm.
just for one product query. So it's a very interesting, very different approach to the traditional SEO
Mhm.
product discovery.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like they're treating these, an AI engine almost like a personal shopping assistant.
Absolutely. And we will definitely at some point talk about Walmart and their super
Mm.
agents because this is very relevant for AEO, but
Mhm.
we're not going to get into that today. Just know that we've got a whole case study just about that. But the results are speaking for themselves because they're seeing these higher conversion rates because by the time
Mm.
someone gets to the site, they're much further along in that decision-making process already.
Yeah, and I think what a lot of businesses are missing about where this is headed is, we're not just talking about better qualified traffic to your website.
Right, because the end game is not about sending people to your site at all. The ultimate goal, and this is what the platforms are working towards, is building a
Mhm.
complete end-to-end purchasing experience. So,
Yeah.
as an example, you can see where this is going purely if you look at the partnerships.
Mm.
Perplexity already has a PayPal partnership for in-platform buying, and that is where this is going.
Yeah, so I mean, that's kind of wild. I mean, imagine, I think this
Mhm.
is the scenario we're headed towards, right?
Yep.
Someone, or, you go into ChatGPT, you say, I need a project management tool for a 15-person marketing team with Slack integration and XYZ features, but I need it to be under $50 per user per month, or whatever your criteria may be. ChatGPT again gives you three options. You pick one, you enter your payment details inside of ChatGPT, and now
Yep.
boom, you're a customer. I never even visited that website.
Yep. So if your product wasn't mentioned in that conversation, if your product wasn't those 3 options that were provided, you didn't just lose a website visit. So you didn't even just lose that top of funnel traffic. You lost the entire sale. So you lost that conversion, and there is no opportunity for your paid ads to retarget them. There's no chance for your sales team to follow up. There is no second chance at all, because all of it, the search, the discovery, and the purchase, all happened within the AI search engine,
Wild.
completely upending everything that we know about traditional marketing.
Yeah, that the traditional funnel has
Yep.
completely disappeared and you don't even know about it. You don't even know what
Yep.
happened, right?
Yep.
So the AI conversation becomes the entire buyer journey from, like you said, discovery all the way to purchase. And you had no idea that you lost out.
Exactly. So that is why AEO, God, it's such a hard one to say. That's why AEO optimization is so critical, because it's not just about brand awareness. It's about being present at the exact moment that someone makes that purchasing decision. And that moment is increasingly happening within these AI platforms.
Yeah. So when we talk about businesses getting 6 times higher conversion rates from AI traffic, that's actually going to be probably the last generation to see that metric.
Yeah.
Future customers, when we get to this end game, there might never be a trackable click or traffic at all.
Yeah. The purchase happens entirely in the conversation. And if you're not part of that conversation, you are invisible essentially to that customer segment entirely, which is absolutely not what you want. So that's why we wanted to talk about this. It's so,
Mhm.
so important to
Yeah.
be thinking about this.
And so the data person inside of me focusing on measurement for the last however many years is, maybe dying a little bit inside.
Yeah.
But what are the tools? What does the measurement side look like? How do we even track this stuff?
So that is one of the biggest challenges right now. Traditional metrics like organic clicks become less relevant when your content's being quoted in AI responses. So you're going to need to start keeping track of things like share of voice in AI answers. So how many times are you mentioned? Branded mention frequency, and what Ethan Smith, who's the founder of Graphite and did the Lenny's podcast, it's what he's calling citation optimization. So like just how often you're cited. There are definitely some new tools that are emerging. So Graphite, this company, has an AEO tracker. That's one of the reasons why this guy is the authority on it. And I do highly recommend listening to that podcast because it is really interesting. And there are a couple of other companies that are building AI visibility metrics, but it's still such early days that there actually isn't a ton of tracking and measurement options quite yet.
Yeah, I think that's something we'll cover more next week during the more tactical session.
Yeah.
There's obviously ways to see traffic coming from AI bots, although sometimes that is hidden or identified as unknown if they scrub headers and stuff. But, still traffic from an AI bot could mean thousands of mentions in AI answers. So you might see one AI bot come to you for answers, but that could be, there could be an exponential amount of, like, let's call it traffic that you're getting from that. So, for our listeners who are feeling overwhelmed by yet another thing they need to master, and also, I got to say, something that feels a little bit like a black box, right?
Yeah.
What's your advice? What do you start doing today?
I mean, we'll definitely get more into this next week. Like, that's why we wanted to separate out these 2 episodes, because I think today is all about, or this episode is all about, just giving some background on why it's important. Then next week we'll really get into it. But I think a lot of it is just starting with your expertise. So pick one area where you genuinely know more about the topic than other people, and create really helpful, clear content around the questions that people ask about that topic. So again, it's what I was just talking about with, if we were to go onto Reddit and start talking to people about, in the small business forum about how to use AI, that would be us building up our citations, building up our expertise, and starting to be able to get quoted a little bit more. But again, it's all about the authenticity. It's all about you sharing your expertise in a way that brings value. But, don't try and boil the ocean. A lot of people haven't even heard of this yet. So even by listening to this episode right now, you are going to be ahead of a lot of people who haven't even wrapped their head around this concept yet. So you do. So early adopters do really have an advantage with this one.
And next week, we'll get tactical.
Yeah.
Specific strategies, tools, implementation frameworks, everything you can use to kind of get that early adopter advantage.
Yeah. How many times can we say it? See, we're just doing it right now. We're Keyword.
Yeah.
Because again, understanding why the AEO matters is just the first step. The real value actually comes from knowing how to optimize for the answer engines and what's working at this moment in time. Because again, we're probably going to have to do an update episode on this in 3 months because it's going to change.
Totally. So the key takeaway for today, if you're going to learn one thing
Yeah.
from all of this, search is shifting from find the best page to get the best answer. And if you want your business to be part of those answers, you need to start thinking like an answer engine, like ChatGPT, not just optimizing for search rankings like you have been for the past however many years.
Exactly. So it's not about replacing what you're doing. It's about evolving your approach for a world where AI is increasingly the middleman between your content and your customers. So don't give up on SEO entirely. There's lots of SEO is dead stories going around right now. It's not. This is just an evolution of SEO.
All right, Jess. Let's now dive into AI news that actually matters for our listeners. And this week, there's one story that is pretty important for our audience, even if you don't realize it yet.
So you are talking about the OpenAI-Nvidia partnership, right?
Exactly. So here's what happened. OpenAI and Nvidia announced a strategic partnership where OpenAI is going to deploy 10 gigawatts worth of Nvidia's AI systems. And to put that in perspective, that's enough computing power to run a small city.
Well, first of all, do we want to just remind people what NVIDIA is? Because that is a big name in this space, but your average person might not have heard of them beyond a news story.
Well, I'll remind everyone with Jensen Huang, the CEO, saying that he is moving AI exactly where he intends it to go. So
exactly, we saw him at London Tech Week, and that is a direct quote.
So that gives you a little instance that he, not to toot his horn, but I guess in some ways he really is one of the driving forces behind the AI revolution.
He definitely is, yeah.
And that is because NVIDIA builds the GPUs or chips that power a lot of the AI processing power. They're really on the cutting edge. Their advancements with GPUs, which was originally for like gaming and then eventually Bitcoin mining and all that stuff, it really enabled the AI revolution to happen. And now they are pushing it forward with continually building and creating stronger and stronger processing units so that AI can do a lot of the reasoning and thinking. So they are like the fundamental building block that is enabling AI to happen.
They're also one of the most valuable companies in the world now, aren't they? Yeah. This is why Jensen can say that sort of thing. But
I'd be lying if I said I didn't own a little bit of stock to get in there.
I mean, fair. But why should our audience actually care about this? Because if you're a startup with 20 employees, like why should they care about this infrastructure story?
Yeah, I mean, these chips aren't cheap. I think some of the cheapest models are $5,000 or something like that. And primarily, I've been to some of these, super micro computer processing NVIDIA events. And it's like,
wow, that sounds exciting.
Yeah. Anyway, but it's like massive companies deploying huge data centers with these GPUs. It's been pretty inaccessible. This announcement in this partnership with OpenAI, I think starts to democratize a lot of that access to, these powerful AI components. Right now, if you want to run advanced AI models for your business, say for customer service or content generation, you're limited by computing power and cost. You're having to delve into the, Google or the cloud environments to be able to run a lot of that. This partnership means OpenAI can offer much more sophisticated AI capabilities at significantly lower costs. So we're talking AI that can handle all of this complex reasoning that was probably only available to really large tech companies who are going to deploy their own AI, data centers.
So basically what you're saying is that this will trickle down to the tools that we use on a daily basis.
Totally. Better ChatGPT models, more powerful API access for smaller businesses, AI tools that can handle video, audio, text simultaneously. We're always talking about how AI allows, small businesses, startups to have access to the same types of tools that enterprise customers have. And I think this partnership will only further allow that. But, one thing to be really clear about, and this is a kind of a caveat, these announcements, and especially this one, is a bit of a shell game. So the announcement is up to 10 gigawatts. right? It doesn't mean OpenAI is actually deploying that tomorrow. It's more of a headline to show ambition or where we're trying to go.
So it's less of a guaranteed contract and kind of more of a signal that OpenAI and Nvidia are aligning, shall we say.
Exactly. Exactly. It tells us the direction of travel, where we're going. Massive scale, cheaper compute, bigger, more advanced models that we can tap into with our ChatGPT subscription. But the timeline and the specifics of all of that are still very fuzzy. Hence why, this is maybe more of like drive the stock price up than it is actually like here's revenue on the or bottom line, enhancement.
And speaking of tools getting more accessible, some of our other news stories this week, we actually have a lot of product announcements. And the reason why we wanted to flag these is as we start to come into the holiday shopping season, you're going to start to see some of these tools become more available, which I think is exactly what we are seeing, because these are all going to help, particularly in the retail and commerce space. So Amazon has just launched something called Seller Assistant. So it's essentially agentic AI, and I say that loosely because we all know what our thoughts are on agentic, but it's, yeah, exactly. Finger quotes. It's agentic AI for their marketplace sellers.
But this is another, perfect example of enterprise level AI becoming available to smaller businesses. The tool can automatically manage your inventory, optimize your pricing. That's very important
That
for the
is very
holiday
important.
season.
Yeah.
Respond to customer queries and even handle some logistics. Very useful.
What is particularly interesting about this is that it's showing how the platforms are starting to build AI directly into the ecosystems. So again, you don't need to be an expert with a lot of this. Amazon is basically saying, here's an AI agent that's going to run your business for you. So it's definitely, again, the direction that we're starting to see things go into.
Great point. That trend we're seeing everywhere. So Google just rolled out AI generated product summaries in their AI mode. So if someone searches for best wireless headphones, instead of getting a list of links like we talked about, they get an AI curated summary with pros, cons, pricing, recommendations, maybe even a little memory mode coming into place where you can see like, oh, this is actually really good for me specifically.
Which all of this brings us right back into our main topic for today. This is exactly why AEO matters, because if Google's AI is summarizing these products and making these recommendations, you need to make sure that your products are in that conversation. And actually, if Google is introducing this, it means you're going to have to, you're going to be forced into doing this, whether you like it or not.
Absolutely. As much as AI democratizes a lot of these tools, the larger players are starting to do this and they will eventually own the market if we don't get ahead of it. So definitely something to keep track of. One more that caught my attention, another product update. Perplexity just launched an AI agent that manages your email for $200 a year. So it reads, prioritizes, drafts responses, and even handles scheduling.
So $200 a year seems pretty expensive right off the bat, but that's less than a lot of businesses spend on project management tools. So it's interesting. It's interesting. I think it's worth checking out.
Well, and I think an interesting comparison for this is the company Superhuman, which a few years came out and was like, this is the best email tool forever. And I remember, I forget how much it cost. It was like $40 a month or.
Yeah, it was quite expensive. I've used it and I was underwhelmed.
Yeah, it seemed expensive given Gmail's free. And 5 years ago, this kind of AI assistant to build off the shelf would have cost a ridiculous amount of money, right?
Absolutely.
And it's certainly cheaper than hiring a part-time assistant. So it's an interesting price point. It's not that much. Again, it's basically like $20 a month again, that we're seeing over and over and over again. I mean, honestly, you could build this yourself pretty easily. So I'm not sure if it's the best use of funds, but maybe it's starting an ecosystem play for them about, building a lot of different assistants.
I think that's probably exactly what it is.
Yeah.
But we've got quite a few product announcements this week. What's the common thread within all of these?
I think we talk about it quite often, and I'll just reiterate here, which is the barriers to advanced or enterprise grade AI is disappearing very quickly. Whether it's infrastructure from Nvidia, platform integration from Amazon and Google, or direct AI services like Perplexity's email agent, small, medium-sized businesses, startups even, one-person solopreneurs, you're getting access to capabilities that used to be exclusive to only the largest of companies. All right, Jess, enough news. Time for everyone's favorite segment, AI Gone Wrong. And I will say this week's story hits close to home for anyone using ChatGPT with business integrations.
Yeah, this is kind of a cautionary tale more than kind of the funny AI gone wrong that we usually like to focus on. So Eito Miyamura, who is a researcher at Oxford, just discovered some not great security risks with ChatGPT. He basically got ChatGPT to leak private email data just using someone's email address.
Also, you crushed that pronunciation of that name.
Oh,
I would just
thank you. I did practice that one because I wanted to get it right.
Love it. But how did he do that with just an email address? That is kind of surprising.
So it exploited ChatGPT's new Model Context Protocol, which is something that we've talked about, MCPs. MCPs, yep. It's the feature that lets ChatGPT connect to Gmail, calendars, other business tools. Remember, we described it as like a USB port. That's essentially what it is. But the way that it used the email address is an attacker sends an innocent-looking calendar invite, but hidden in tiny fonts or white text so you can't see it are malicious instructions.
That's really interesting. As a quick little aside, I saw something on LinkedIn where a guy was talking about how on his LinkedIn he adds in white letters a tuna recipe or something like that, and so now he's getting all these job reach outs with like tuna recipes in, so he knows if it's a bot.
Yep. Yeah, which is really smart. I've seen that for some people were doing that for a while with resumes or with CVs. They were doing that. If you put white text in, you can hit a bunch of keywords and that will help bypass the ATS tracking systems.
Applicant tracking systems.
Yeah, that's it. That's the word I was looking for. So it's not a new idea, and it can obviously be used for entertaining or practical use cases. This was not. This was not good.
Yeah, this one is a little more malicious, but so I mean, you say very innocently, "Hey, ChatGPT, check my schedule." It's going to read both the legitimate request and then it's going to read the hidden malicious comment, and without guardrails, it's not going to know the difference.
Exactly. So it might give you your calendar summary, but it will also secretly search your emails and send sensitive data to the attacker's server. And because this happens in OpenAI's cloud, there's no trace on your network. So you would have absolutely no idea.
That's the scary part.
Exactly.
The traceability is a problem. And I mean, I assume you have access to like everything from your email, right?
Everything. So financial reports, passwords, personal conversations. So the demo showed ChatGPT being tricked into searching for specific sensitive information and then sending it out. So this is a demo that didn't go wrong, clearly.
Yeah, it went too right. But I assume they've seen this.
Yes,
I'm hoping they're putting in a fix.
Yep. So they patched it after it was disclosed. Obviously, this was done in a research environment. So this was done by at the University of Oxford or by someone who works with Oxford. So they have patched it. But what is concerning is that this is targets exactly the integrations that make AI particularly useful for businesses. So your email connector, your calendar access, those are features that companies actually want.
Yeah. I think it also reinforces what we've been saying very early on. Assume anything you put into AI systems could potentially become public. It's the New York Times test, as we like to call it.
Yep.
Whether through bugs, breaches, or legal requests, there's always going to be a risk with some of these public AI and public LLMs.
Totally. And as the AI agents get more powerful, I think you can expect attackers to find increasingly creative exploits. It's just like spammers, or scam calls who are now just getting really sophisticated. So it's just something to be aware of. And obviously you need to be really tight on your security. Right. So let's wrap up with some key takeaways from our deep dive into answer engine optimization.
First, search is fundamentally changing. And that's the big one. We're moving from find the best page to get the best answer. 60% of searches now end without a click. And that number is only going to climb. We're still early days, and it's already at 60%.
Very early days. Second, AEO is different from SEO, but it builds on top of SEO. So instead of ranking number one for keywords, you're trying to get quoted by AI engines. So instead of optimizing for clicks, you're optimizing for citations across multiple trusted sources.
Yep. And third, the content that works for AEO needs to be straightforward and factual. Think quotable statements rather than flowery, I hate to say it, MBA marketing, buzzwordy copy.
Yeah.
AI engines need really clear, verifiable information that they can confidently cite.
It's definitely worth remembering that this actually levels the playing field because with traditional SEO, startups often couldn't compete against established domain authority. So anyone who's been around for a really, really long time or can throw a lot of money at it. With AEO, you can get mentioned in a relevant, Reddit thread tomorrow, and you can start appearing in AI answers immediately.
And the reason we're all here, the early movers on this are going to see really, really incredible results. Remember that 6-time higher conversion rate from companies like Webflow, compared to traditional Google traffic. Users are so much more qualified when an AI has given them kind of essentially a consultation. They know your brand, they know what you do, they had a specific pain point and they asked about it, and now they're coming to your website. Like that is, marketing qualified lead gold.
So the bottom line is that AEO is not going to replace traditional marketing channels, but ignoring it means that you're going to miss an increasingly important touch point. And anyone that starts adapting to it now is going to have a really significant head start.
Yep. And next week, we're going to get tactical with specific strategies, tools, implementation frameworks. We love a good framework, don't we?
We love a framework.
But for now, just understand that the shift is happening, and it's happening very quickly.
So that is everything for this week. If you found this episode helpful, please make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And remember that we are on social media, so you can follow us at early_adopter on LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok. Remember, there's no E in adopter.
And if you start noticing AI engines answering questions, if you have an interesting story about AI traffic, if you've got your own little target example, we'd love to see some small business examples around that. Because it's hard to find right now. It's not clear, how much people are really doing around this. So if you have some great examples, email us at hello@earlyadopter.ai, adopter without the E. We love hearing from listeners.
It's also worth noticing your own behavior. How are you finding things? Are you still searching things with traditional Google, or have you started using ChatGPT? My dad told me he bought a new laptop using ChatGPT. It helped him figure out which laptop he wanted to use. So
wow, that's a big purchase. That's a sizable purchase.
It's a sizable purchase. And I think because he had very specific requirements for it, the chat really helped him, guide him in the right direction. So yeah, have a look at your own behavior, because everyone's consumer behavior is changing quite drastically around this. Anyway, we look forward to talking more about AEO next week. Thank you for listening to Early Adopter, where we help make AI your unfair advantage. And until next time, keep innovating and stay curious.
Bye, Jess.
Bye, Kyle.